Welcome to the Soma sessions. I am your resident fairy godmother, Tamara Angela, Reiki practitioner, somatic practitioner. Welcome to this gentle space. I want you to be able to just tune in and take a few minutes to relax your nervous system and learn how to rejuvenate your energy body. Today's episode, we're talking about how to listen to your body and the way your body may be signaling stress and illness. This is a very somatic practice, meaning that basically our mind, our body, and our spirit, it's all working together. And there are times where something may not set right with your spirit and your body will speak. There are times where your mind is overloaded and it speaks through your body. You can tell so much is going on in the body because the body is always speaking. And so we have to have a practice of presence to make sure that we come home to the body so we can sense what is going on. So today we're going to start out with just making sure that we set an intention while we are tuned in here, listening and present. If you tuned in, I want you to just take a moment to give thanks for setting aside some time to just listen to this episode. I know a lot of you said that, you listen while you go walking or you listen while you're on the treadmill and working out. And those are spaces of being super intentional. So I want you just to give yourself thanks for the consistency of tuning in and of finding places where you trust information and where what is given actually resonates with you. So as we come to this practice, I always want us to just kind of, whenever I do anything in person, before we get started, we release whatever was happening before we got there, right? Because ideally, when we meet in person, you've come through traffic, um, you were doing something that morning before we met, dealing with family, taking phone calls, what have you. And we have to purposely release that so we can let our minds know, hey, for the next however many minutes, I need to be focused over here. So as we, do our breathing countdown, that's what I want you to tell yourself. Like, look, for the next however many minutes, this is where I've committed to being, and I'm safe here in this place. Because sometimes we're so set on moving from one thing to the next and checking things off of our agenda. It's like, I'm going to listen to this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. We're already thinking about the next thing, and we're not present where we are. So, like I said, if you're working out, continue to walk that treadmill and listen. If you're walking on like a walking trail, continue to walk and focus. If you are listening to this at home, and I know somebody said that they listen while they clean too. Totally intentional. If you're able to lie down to focus because you're just like, hey, I need to tune into this and just relax myself, just take a deep breath, one hand on the chest, one hand near your abdomen, and just pay attention to your normal breathing right now. Pay attention to how your breath is flowing. Inhaling deeply through the nose letting your abdomen rise, and then exhale slowly through the mouth. And allow your body to just release that tension. Like every time you exhale, we're going to push some of that tension and that stress out. We're going to just breathe in through the nose and out. One more time. Breathe in and out. We want to just anchor ourselves today with this episode because we're going to be talking a lot about what it feels like to be present in your body. Because a lot of us tend to dissociate and just kind of disconnect, and it leads to a lot. This is how you can be like completely forgetful. You can show up to situations and not really enjoy it. You show up to different events and it's hard to remember people's names and things like that. Like you're not completely anchored in the experience. So our intention today, I want you to set your own one word intention of what you want to feel more of just in general today. So set a, one word about for the next 24 hours. What do you want to feel? Whether you want to feel more of it or if you want to just like initiate feeling it at all. And that's going to be your anchor over the next 24 hours. But as we go through this session, I want you to pay attention to your body, pay attention to any aches or pains. Pay attention to also, because we do that a lot with body scans. It's like scan for stress, scan for pain. But I also want you to start to pay attention to positive responses that your body has, right? So positive responses to certain people or certain environments, because we want to pay attention to what it feels like to actually feel settled. What does it actually feel like to walk into a space and feel like, whew, okay, I feel safe here. I feel calm. I feel relaxed. We want to pay attention to that too. So I practice a lot of, I've been developing more of my somatic practice work, which is less fixing, right? We're not really fixing something. We want to make sure that we listen. We listen and we tune in. This is a huge part of the work that I've been doing with intuition is like, how do you listen? What does your intuition sound like, right? What does it feel like to sense things intuitively? And we have to be tuned in order to recognize that. So a lot of somatic wisdom comes from not feeling like you have to fix something and be a problem solver, because that takes you out of your body and gives you this like peripheral omnipotent point of view where you're just like looking at everything instead of being present in the moment. We want to listen. This is more of embodied healing versus performative healing. And what do we mean by that? Embodiment is it's funny because I have had people ask me, do I actually practice Reiki? Do I practice the things that I talk with my clients about? And this is a really valid question. Because I say all the time, you know what? I used to eat pork chops. I used to love a good pork chop with gravy and onions over some rice, but I stopped eating pork in college, right? So, but I still cook bacon. I still cook bacon. I still put I still cook the kids pork chops. I don't eat it, but I make a damn good pork chop. I know what pork chop's supposed to taste like, right? Um, and I know the flavor profiles of what they taste good with. So I do give it to them, but I don't do it, right? But I'm not saying that it's bad for them. It's bad for me, but then it's good for them. It's just like it's not a preference anymore. So I don't practice, when I don't practice that same mindset when it comes to the healing practices, right? So I go to yoga. I go to Reiki. I do self Reiki, right? I use all of those tools. It's a space of embodiment for me to wake up every day and sit in gasho for a few minutes. When I feel myself getting discombobulated, sitting down and doing some of the self Reiki practices. Like those are things that I incorporate every day. When I sit down, one of my favorite sayings in Reiki is a cup of tea, a cup of enlightenment, because I am a tea girl. So just when I'm sipping my tea, I'm not like gulping it down. I'm tasting the honey that's in there and I'm focused for that few moments while I'm enjoying that tea and I'm bringing myself back to center. These aren't things that I'm doing performatively just to learn Reiki and then turn around and teach it to you and create some cute graphics. It's not performative. It's not something that I do just to offer a class. It is something that I practice and I've been practicing long before I shared it with you. I've only decided to share it because, some people were like, hey, like I've seen the difference in you. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's this thing. And people were like, why don't you open up about that? Especially, for me and the Black community to offer things that are helpful outside of what we tend to know in our community. I like to offer those things a little bit more loudly. So this is a space of embodied healing for me. It's not something that is performative. It's not something that I do just for fun. I actually got into yoga years ago. It was, oh gosh, so long ago. Um, as a means of learning how to stretch, because I had some issues after having a pretty decent car accident, getting hit by somebody who was DUI. And I was having, issues with my back, and they were giving me these stretches, and they were actually, PT was giving me these stretches, and they were actually yoga stretches. And so I would kind of dip in and out of yoga. And then just more recently, after having some neurological things go on, I committed to coming to yoga, and I was like, ooh, like this is really, really made a difference. Where I was coming to yoga for the stretches, it started to click in other areas of my life. And so, I'm also practicing to become a yoga instructor, but in a space of embodiment, not just like performatively. It's like it's another piece that I want to add on to what I do as an extension for help and for healing, and to serve, not to become like huge yoga teacher. Everybody's coming, let's all take the pictures. Like, no. Um, And so I think when we get into a space of embodiment where like this is actually your lifestyle, that's where we start to see things change. And I mentioned that as well because even with the therapeutic things that I do with clients, they're like, oh, we've had one conversation. Whoo, this feels like a load off. And then they're like, oh, I mean, I got to come back and do other things. Yes. Like it's not just like we talk once and then everything is good. So, like, when you have those deeper things going on, it has to be a space of embodiment where you are consistently practicing, and you're consistently working through things, right? It takes a little bit more than just that one, that one layer. Um, and so this type of embodiment that I'm talking about as well, it helps you to collaborate with your nervous system and partner with your nervous system. So you're listening to your body, right? You got to know how to communicate with yourself. What is that dull throbbing pain saying? What is that constant feeling of nausea saying, right? Like what is that? Why do I constantly feel the need to tap my fingers? Like, what is that telling me? We have the means to be able to protect ourselves and protect our own energy. And so many people don't do it. They're lacking boundaries. They're letting everybody in. They're letting everybody around, and that's simply because you're dissociated with your body. You're not completely present. And when that happens, you can't listen, right? So there's a couple different ways that dissociation can kind of happen, right? So I give this example all the time in fun. When people meet me, they meet me in my Libra rising. That is that's that side of me that decided to go out and be social and hang out and talk to people and meet people. That's that side of me that likes to just kind of go out and float around and find an experience and just kind of, oh, what's that, and we'll have the random conversations with folks. But then there's the other side of me that is very Capricorn sun, that is like, well, who are these people? Did they deserve to have your phone number? Were you really going to talk to them afterwards? Right? So you've got to understand, and this is where we're going to have deeper conversations about the shadow self too, because the shadow self, when you really, really develop that side of you, can really serve as a space of protection for you. So when we dissociate, we can dissociate because we're daydreaming, which is totally healthy. Daydreaming is completely necessary. Daydreaming to me allows us to our ideas are downloads. They're downloads from God, right? You didn't make that up. You didn't sit by yourself and just make that up. These ideas come from the ethers, and they're implanted in us because we have the opportunity, the resources, the actual connections, or we're going to be given the opportunities, the resources, and connections to be able to make those things happen. And so you are given that dream, that idea, right? And it comes from the ethers. And so you've got to kind of disconnect from the body a bit to be able to receive it, right? You can't be so grounded that you're not, floating around a little bit to receive that idea. So you receive it, and then you've actually got to come back to the body to practice it, to embody it, to organize it. You've got to actually come back to the body to be able to do that. So daydreaming is totally healthy. It's like, oh, where can I be free enough, right? Because when you're daydreaming, your spirit is kind of floating out there, and the receptors are open, and you're available to receive in a way that you wouldn't if you were just like completely grounded and practical and sensible in the body. And so that kind of dissociation is like, it completely needs to happen. There is dissociation that happens due to stress, and that excuse me, that is where we can sometimes um, we can sometimes have trouble managing emotions, managing our thoughts, and things start to feel overwhelming. And when that occurs, we kind of take flight from the body. So, this is how you can show up to an event and not really remember all the things that happened because you were so anxious, right? Maybe you were so anxious during the event. You met a lot of people, you talked to a lot of people, but you don't remember anybody's name. You don't remember certain portions of the event or of the day because your anxiety prevailed, right? Or just straight up stress when you attend said event or said experience and you're there, you're in protection mode. You've kind of got this shell around you. So this stress and this creates maybe spaces of feeling angry or rejected or embarrassed. And so you've got this kind of shell. Think of like kind of having like this turtle shell and you're kind of only peeking out. So you're walking through that event, peeking out of the turtle shell, and you're not fully present in the body, right? Because you're surveying, you're spending a lot of time surveying everything, trying to see everything, to perceive any threats. And you're not present. You've missed certain things. You haven't seen certain things. You weren't able to pay attention to certain things. And so dissociation, it stops us from being fully present to actually enjoy certain situations. So where does things like, stress and stuff like that, like where does it live in the body? A lot of times, stress shows up in the digestive system. So this has to do with, appetite decreasing or appetite increasing because you stress eat. Maybe you stress snack. You do a lot of grazing. Or it could be the opposite. It's like, I'm too nervous. I'm living on 10. I don't really want to eat, right? Because when we're stressed in that way, the body is looking for a threat. And so if you're trying to perceive a threat, you're not sitting down to eat a whole meal, right? Your body is actually just storing up energy, preparing for a fight. And so you're not really eating or committing to eating full meals. It shows up as like nausea, lots of inflammation, right? And so when we're constantly stressed, this is where our immune system starts to cause issue, where you might be catching colds more often. That inflammation occurs. So this, is the point where it creates headaches and the blood pressure goes up. That kind of thing. You trouble concentrating, you get a lot of brain fog, right? Because there's so much crowding you. This is where physically in the muscular system, you have like those tightened muscles, or you might have some muscle spasms, lots of tension in the jaw area. Lots of tension happens in the jaw. This is where you might wake up clenching, your jaw. You wake up, you've been clenching your jaw all night, grinding your teeth, that kind of thing. Lots of sweating because the body is trying to expel a lot of energy to prepare itself against this perceived threat, right? So all of these things are happening in the body at a very um it's a very animalistic approach to handling things, right? Because the body is fine tuned to address things physically, right? Because it's still on factory default setting to address things physically when really the stress is trying to make ends meet and pay bills. There's no actual physical stress there, but your body doesn't know that. And so it goes through all of those somatic things. So this is huge too when you're doing that body scan to understand where stress actually lives in your body. For everybody, it's different for everybody. So I gave those examples because I want, to kind of point you in the right direction. But by no means does it mean that those are like that's the only way um things look, right? So you have to know what that looks like for you. Does it show up as tension, irritability? Um, does it show up as kind of, having a short temper? Like, what does that ultimately look like for you? For a lot of people, most recently, folks tend to want to isolate because that's, I hate to say it, but it's become kind of the trendy thing to say, I don't want to deal with people. Um no, I'm not talking to people. Like it's just become the and that's a valid thing. But um that's not the only way. A little self-care about ourselves, of course, but does everything have to be I have to retreat in order to gather myself? No. There's lots of ways that you can make sure that you have that practice to come back to the body. So and I talk about yoga, but yoga is another one. That your yoga practice is you and your mat, but typically it's done in small classes and there are other people around. And so everything like isolation isn't the only answer to decreasing stress, like total isolation. So we're talking about how like what dissociation looks like um, due to stress, just coming away from the body. Drinking and drinking drugs, it allows us to dissociate from the body and live in a space where we are disconnected for a moment. It is purposeful disconnection from the body because for some people, when they are actually fully linked in and tapped in their body, they experience mental anguish, emotional pain, and they don't know how to deal with that, and so they like to dissociate from the body. So certain yoga here because those are things that are super helpful for me. I also mentioned things like acupuncture. Um, those kind of practices are super helpful. Tai Chi, um, those kind of practices are very helpful. I'm gonna typically mention things that are non-medicinal in that way, because we've been taught in the Western world to take a pill and reduce pain, take a pill and reduce inflammation, take a pill and this. Now, I'm also going to put the disclaimer out all the time that as a clinical therapist, if you need medications for things like depression, consistent anxiety, clinical depression and anxiety, take your meds. Please take your meds. It's fine. Do that. If you need an SSRI, do that. We are advocates for that over here. Find the proper person to properly medicate you if that is what you need for clinical reasons. Do it. It's necessary. It's okay. We like that. We like to have balance, right? Because then if that is what you need clinically, then it's going to help you to better be present in your body, to practice yoga, to practice Reiki, right? To practice all these things so these other things that you're embodying actually are effective. So I say that in both ways, but then I also caution against, you know, you have consistent inflammation in the body that is causing pain. We don't need to be taking an ibuprofen all the time. We don't need to be on the goodies powder all the time. We need to understand where the pain is stemming from. Is it somatic or is it physical? And then we need to address it that way. And so that's what we're going to talk about a lot of time in the Soma session, is kind of how do you start to advocate for yourself and decipher where some of this stuff is stemming from, because stress is a silent killer and it can just constantly send off bells and whistles in the body, and then you check and there's nothing there, right? And so we have to learn how to manage all of those things. So Reiki, I describe it, if you've been following me for a minute, I always describe it like your grandma's prayers, right? So it is for my church folks. Think corporate prayer, right? Think the sick and shut in list, right? So when, growing up in church, you would have that sick and shut in list, and somebody would talk about, hey, this person can't make it to church because they're sick this week, or they're under the weather, or they've had a surgery, or they've gone out of town to go tend to a loved one who is sick, so we're going to pray over them, right? Nobody ever stops and says, you know what, we're here in Atlanta and we're going to pray for sister such and such's cousin who's over in Texas. Nobody ever says, is the prayer going to make it? Nobody thinks about how the prayer gets there. Nobody thinks about that. We just simply come together and build up the energy and send the prayer. I'm sending you prayers, right? We say that all the time, sending you good love, thoughts, and prayers. I'm sending it. Reiki is that. It's like your grandma's prayers. We talk about it. Grandma's prayers have covered us, right? And lasted and endured. Why? Because it's an energy that she has given you that you walk around with. Reiki is that. That's all it is. It's a way to tap into like such a positive energy that is already here, and cover ourselves with it and use it to heal ourselves. So it's like your grandma's prayers, right? I also look at it as a way to attune myself to the energy and the intelligence that is already in my body, right? So when you're in prayer mode, you're quiet, you're calm, and you're turned within so you can hear what else is going on. It's the same thing we're doing with Reiki. We're getting quiet. We're listening to the body. You may, like in certain Reiki sessions, I am, laying hands across the body to tap into the energy and kind of activate it. It's the same as when you go down for altar call. They lay hands. It activates an energy. During Reiki sessions, people experience different sensations. They may experience like a tingling, like a lot, majority of the time, it feels just warm and comforting, like a warm blanket. Some spots from time to time can feel cold, like if it's just like stagnant energy and it hasn't been moving, it might feel a little cold. Um, and so Reiki is just about like just moving that energy and just releasing it and helping you to better tap in, right? Because what's the other thing that we do where prayer is concerned? It's like, I'm going to pray for you because you can't do it yourself. So I see Reiki very much the same. I am going to send you this energy because you're not able to tap into it yourself right now. And people, oh, what about the energy? Well, you don't want anybody negative praying over you either, right? Because we talk about that. I don't need everybody's prayers. So you're gonna look for your Reiki practitioner very much the same. You're gonna make sure that you vibe with them, and that you feel good about their energy. Because the key with Reiki, though, I'm not sending you my energy. I'm simply, their energy exists all around us. I'm simply helping as a conduit to tap into that good energy that's around us and make sure that you partake in it. That's it. I don't, and this is why I love practicing Reiki, because I don't have to give of myself. I'm not giving of myself, but it's more helpful when your Reiki practitioner isn't frazzled and all over the place and things like that, because that energy can end up lending itself to the situation unnecessary, to your Reiki experience unnecessarily. Same thing like with yoga. Yoga is not, everybody's so fixated on the poses. Yoga is not like, you don't have to get the poses right. It's, there's no right or wrong. It's about your presence there on the mat, right? Because when you're on the mat, one of the things the teachers tell you is like, okay, we're gonna do if you're in downward facing dog, you can adapt and go into child's pose, right? Because maybe your body right now, your upper body is not feeling, and it's giving you resistance for downward dog. And so calm down and practice in another restorative pose, because downward dog is pretty restorative. And so what is another restorative pose where you can adapt, right? Maybe that's cobra, maybe it's child's pose, right? And so then you meet back, that whenever you are practicing an asana, your instructor usually lets you know, as we're going to go through a flow, and I'm going to give you the flow of the poses. If you get lost, if you get stuck, if you have to adapt, do all of that. And then meet me back in, and they usually give you a focal point pose. Meet me back in tabletop. Wherever you go while you're on your mat, just know we're going to come back to tabletop and we're going to reset from there, right? And so it's about your presence while you're there. Are you listening to your body? A lot of times, and I do a lot of yoga for the balance work too. And good Lord, my balance is crap, dealing with all this neurological stuff or whatever, right? And so I work through it, and then I always find one side of my body is more balanced than the other. Happens every single time. One side is always more balanced than the other. But that's okay, right? And so they give you separate poses. Maybe we're doing tree pose, but then it's like I'm rooted in my right leg, but then my left leg isn't, I'm only able to keep my toe on the floor. But then when I change sides, if I do tree pose on with my left leg routed, maybe I'm able to get my right leg up to my knee, right? But all of that's okay. It's about listening to your body and not feeling like you have to push past that or do something totally different. Like I said, we yoga is such an interesting practice because you're not supposed to compare yourself to the people who are around you, right? This is your own personal practice while you're on the mat. You're listening to your body. If your body says stop, you stop. You don't push past it. Um there's no race. You don't get any accolades for pushing past that pain. You stop at that limit, and then you adapt. What else can I do? So it's very much about listening to the body, and it's also about listening to your mindset. My best yoga instructors that I love, they're able to perceive when you're about to hit a wall, and they give you that. There's like, okay, we got to breathe through this. We got 5 more breaths, and they count you down because they know you're about to hit that wall mentally, right? And so they speak to that because you're constantly hitting walls mentally with yoga. And a lot of the embodiment is listening to your inner voice, because your inner voice becomes loud and amplified on that mat. And you see a lot of how you create landmines for yourself. And so I'm constantly working through that on the mat too. It's a meditative place, but I mean, there's plenty of times where I'm like, you know what? Like my mind will drift away and I'll dissociate. What's on the grocery list for after? Oh no, let me come back because I've committed to being here for this 60 minutes and I need to focus here. And I find a way to reground myself. So, just a little bit of reflection. We're going to get to our affirmation as we prepare to wrap up from this session. Um, our affirmations. Um, our affirmation, I'm safe. We want embodied living to feel safe, right? Things I learned to do a long time ago. It's kind of a visualization, and I taught my kids to do this too. Especially for those of us who live a little bit more of a sensitive existence. I put myself in like a crystal ball, right? Mine looks like a disco ball from the outside. I see myself in that ball. And I'm in charge of what flows in, and I can very clearly see everything from outside. So I kind of live in that disco ball sometimes, floating around outside, but it allows me to be present fully in my body with protection. Right. So when I go back to thinking of how my grandmother used to do things, and this is why I make the alchemy oil, she used to anoint us with oil sometimes, but a lot of times before we left out the house. And she would always tell me, put on your armor of God, right? Like you need to fully cloak yourself and protect yourself before you walk outside. It allows you to be fully present while walking through the world with a shield of protection. And I've learned to remember to do that, right? It's better to have chinks in that armor than to have chinks, and scars from people personally being able to get to you. So I've kind of taught my kids to be able to do that so they can kind of live in their bubble of protection, because you can let people in the bubble if you like, right? But they have to have access. They have to have permission to access. And when you create that bubble for yourself, it forces you to look at people and say, do I want you in here? Because I'm comfy in here. Do you look like you're going to disturb my comfort? Like that's what that bubble forces me to say. When I don't travel with my bubble, I end up picking up strays and picking up folks that like just completely are an attack to my sanity and my peace of mind. So I travel around a lot in that bubble. I am present, but not completely accessible. And I think more of us need to do that in order to feel safe for ourselves. It's my means of creating protection for myself. I'm not waiting for somebody else to protect me or be good to me. I have to do that and set that precedent for myself. So, with today's episode, we talked a lot about embodied practice versus performative healing and just how to anchor ourselves and to ground ourselves and what it looks like to come home to the body versus dissociating um, from the body. What that looks like, what that practice looks like, to be able to protect ourselves and to be able to better communicate with our nervous system so we're not dissociated majority of the time, and so we can be, this is that conversation about presence. People hear that conversation about being present, being in the present mind, having mindfulness and things like that, and there's been this sort of aversion created to that kind of thinking, but it simply just means that, like, if I'm going to show up, I need to actually be there, um because that's where we learn to have more fulfilling relationships. Our relationships are more fulfilling. um we're present in the mindset of developing those friendships and ties or not, right? And making better, more intuitive decisions and having more intuitive conversation with ourselves. So we're not kicking ourselves on the back end, like, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why didn't I see that? Well, when you're present in your body, you're able to perceive better, you're able to discern better. So thank you for joining me for this episode of Soma Sessions. I hope you continue to explore what it means to listen to your body and be intentionally plugged into your own healing, because your healing is a space of embodiment. You're not, your healing is not some problem to solve. It's not something to be totally analytical about. It's a space of embodiment. This is a lifestyle. This is everyday living. Doesn't mean you're going to get it right all the time, and nobody's asking to check it off and give you 100% or grade you or score you. This is a space of being present in the experience. So, thank you for joining me. Until next time.